Welcome everybody to another Share Your Experience episode. We're here with Henry, Henry with Tricycle Day, and one of the close partners here with RS as we've been digging into a lot of the psychedelic space together and mind sharing a lot over the last couple months. So glad to have Henry on to share some experience of his own with plant medicine, and sounds like we're going to get a little bit of deep dive into a recent experience that you had. So I'll kick it over to Henry just to give us a little bit of background on kind of what led into this experience, and a little bit of the, kind of, as we always do, a little bit of the set and setting, and start taking us through the journey.
Okay. Yeah, we go straight in, huh? Right on. Okay. Well, first, I just want to say, it's an honor to be here talking to you. I really appreciate the invite, and Reality Sandwich is, kind of an iconic platform in the psychedelic space. So yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to be here with you and share this space.
Much gratitude.
So I guess the experience that, that I was hinting at that I'd like to share is my first sit with ayahuasca. So it was not too long ago, February of this year. I had never had the chance, and it was something that I had always kind of had as something that I'd like to do, but I have the point of view that you really can't force these things. It's best if the opportunity naturally comes up and then you seize it. That's been my approach, at least. There's almost to me, it's an extension of the reverence to the medicine, that you kind of don't want to F with it, because it needs to be an agreement. There's a lot of traditional orientation around that with the plant dietas, etc. Mine wasn't so traditional in the indigenous sense of the word, but I still had that sort of respect and wanted to approach the medicine carefully. But that being said, before I get into the details of my journey, I will say that going into it, I'd always had the impression that ayahuasca was a very powerful medicine, which I can now attest is true, but also that it was quite dangerous psychologically. And I don't know if it's, my personal disposition or maybe luck of the draw, but for me, it was actually very gentle. And that was one of the biggest surprises for me. And I had other experiences to compare that to. For me, I had kind of a unique entry point into psychedelics, because I went basically from zero to infinity, with Bufo Alvarius being my first psychedelic ceremony, which by contrast was more kind of violent in how powerful it was. But for me, yeah, ayahuasca had a very feminine sort of contour to the experience. It felt very nurturing and welcoming, and I was eased into what was ultimately a powerful experience. So I think the first part of your question was what, how it came into my orbit, or what the set and setting were like?
Yeah, kind of, a little bit of, almost set and setting of the lead in,
Yeah.
Maybe
okay.
how it came about, what your process, the few weeks going into it might have been, and then, kind of taking us through the journey itself.
Sure. Okay. So the way that it came into my my valence was a friend of mine. I live in Austin, Texas. A friend of mine told me that he had recently sat with ayahuasca right here in town. And, I know that the underground here is thriving, and I know that there are many practitioners, but in some ways, the paralysis of choice almost made me want to sit back and not jump on it, because you never really know unless you have somebody vouching for that person. So to have a personal friend who I really trust, and feel a sense of similarity with, saying that he, resonated with the experience, I was like, okay, then I think this person could be good for me too. So he made the introduction, and I basically signed up for a ceremony that was taking place no more than 2 weeks later. So there wasn't a ton of time for preparation in the acute sense of the word. But, for me, fortunately, I feel like I'm living in alignment with preparation for psychedelic medicine. So not a lot of rash changes were necessary. He did take a lot of care to explain what he recommended for preparation. And fortunately, a lot of those things were already incorporated into my life. So, having a meditative practice, taking time for movement. I'm a big yoga person. That was a totally separate story, but that was my introduction into psychedelics in the first place. And then the other piece was like changes to the diet, avoiding like a lot of salt and sugar and heavy meat. I'm already vegan. I can definitely afford to cut back probably on the sugar. But, I did that for a few days beforehand, and I felt like I was physiologically prepared. And then so I made the journey over to this guy's house. He hosted it he has like a garage sort of makeshift maloka in his house, adorned with all kinds of beautiful visionary art from South America. And I felt very comfortable there. Everybody brought their bed, because we slept there as well. And then he gave sort of an orientation to the new folks. Some of the people there, it was only 6 of us in the ceremony. And several of the people there had already worked with him before. So there was a level of familiarity and trust and community there. And I felt like I was kind of just, integrating myself in. And in that orientation, he went through a series of what he called agreements. And he's like, I don't like to impose this on people. It's not an authoritarian thing, because if you don't agree to it, you're welcome to go. You can leave. You don't have to do this. But we like to have like a collective agreement that this is going to be sort of the vibe, the energy of the next 12 hours together. And it was pretty unsurprising, the sort of things that he was asking of us. One of them was like confidentiality, like you're not going to share this other people's experiences. There's like we're opening ourselves up to one another here, and so don't violate that vulnerability. But the one thing that I really appreciated and did not expect from his list of agreements was this. He said, "Be cool." And I kind of like chuckled at first. I was like, what does he mean by that? Like, what do you mean be cool? Like, isn't this like some kind of like profound experience? You never know what's going to happen. People could be going through some kind of radical shift, processing demons, who knows? And he was like, and I sort of like, maybe my gesturing or my nonverbal communication suggested to him that I needed an elaboration there. And he was like, people think that this stuff is not, you can't control it. But the reality is, yeah, you might have a really intense internal experience, but you can choose whether you want to express that into the physical world and affect other people's experience around you, because they're going through their own thing. And I really liked that. And if I were going to be a facilitator at any point, it's not in my plans, to be clear, but if I were, that is something that I would borrow and absolutely implement in my practice.
That's really interesting. I agree with that sentiment too of, there's a lot of those notions for anybody who's not sat with the medicine, a lot of those notions that, for me personally, a lot of it gets compared with, because it's all we have to really compare against is like alcohol, for example, and when you've consumed too much alcohol, you lose control of your nervous system and what you do, say, whatever. I haven't found that to be the case on virtually any plant medicine that I've ever experienced. Never had that same sense where you lose actual control. With ayahuasca, I think there's a little bit of the term that we've used in our containers is grounded. Once you feel grounded, hey, people that are local can head home or whatnot, and there's a little bit of you're walking around sometimes after, it's like, oh, I'm not totally grounded yet. Still kind of, feeling some of the power of the medicine. But yeah, that's one thing that I always thought and continue to think is kind of an interesting aspect is, it's stuff that's all happening within your mind or within your consciousness even rather. And, you can control that. It's the medicine that's, working with your consciousness to guide your journey and kind of watching that all come into effect. Did you have any specific intentions that you went in with?
Yeah, I did. And but first, I just want to respond to what you said because I really like your choice of word there around grounded. If anything, these medicines actually put you in more of a state of presence to have more control over what you do, even as your basic assumptions of what is normal, what is fixed, what is fluid are being, violated and broken down. You still have even more control around what to do with it. Like there is a space in between the input, the impression, and your reaction, and you get to choose what to do with that. I've found that is one of like the most underlying common effects of every psychedelic I've tried is the widening of that space and the more acutely aware I am of that space and what to do with it.
I agree.
Cool. Yeah. So I did have some intentions. Generally I like to be more of a passenger with these sorts of things. So I try not to be overly constrictive or directive with my intentions. My intentions generally tend to be some flavor or version of show me what I need to see or learn, right? But I was really encouraged by this practitioner, this facilitator, to come in with intentions. So I put a little bit more guardrails around it than I would have otherwise. And what I whispered into the brew was, please, Mother Ayahuasca, please show me what I need to know in order to be a better partner, a better father, and a better business person. And when I say business person, what I really mean is someone who is showing up trying to make an impact in the world beyond himself and his immediate family. And after I said that, I kind of put that away and then went along for the ride. And then as I kind of reflected afterward in our sharing circle, it dawned on me that the medicine had actually almost systematically and like chronologically answered each one of those, which was pretty cool. So yeah, I mean, I think my experience, if it's tempting to try to like present the best that we can do when we try to talk about these ineffable experiences is kind of reduce them to something that can be wrapped up in a bow. So acknowledging that is a bit of what's happening right here. It's going to sound cleaner than it really was. It kind of felt like there were 4 parts, like 4 chapters in the journey. And the first one, I got the most important insight of the whole thing. And it happened within the first probably 45 minutes, basically right as the medicine was coming on. And that was that no matter what challenges come up in my life, all of these different hangups and obstacles and things that can occupy my, conscious mind in the day to day, underneath all of that, it's really important for me to remember that I already basically won the life lottery because I have an amazing partner who I'm totally in love with. And, it's easy once you have something to take it for granted, right? But actually there are signs all around that I shouldn't be. Like I have all these friends who are still single and still trying to find that person. And what I took away from that realization was, first of all, it was like I went like emotionally through the experience of falling in love with my wife all over again. And falling in love is like a really kind of painful experience, right? Like it's emotionally very demanding. there's like a period of terror where you lose a sense of self because your identity becomes totally woven in and integrated with someone else's. And surrendering to that takes a lot of guts. And I was like sort of forced to do that all over again, which I haven't really felt that way since maybe, I mean, there have been a few times in our relationship, like when we got pregnant, when we got married, when we got engaged. But really all of those moments actually felt pretty natural and easy. It was more like when I first made the move to tell her, like, I like you and I think that we should date. You know, it was like that feeling of just total like butterflies. And also, are we doing this? Oh my God. I just like, I'm falling in. I'm letting go. So that was a really powerful takeaway that just reminded me, hey, I still got this and I can anchor onto that. And as long as I have my relationship, everything else is okay. You know, that's the foundation of everything. So that was really meaningful for me. And it's something that has been a big part of my integration, to just keep internalizing that and keeping it front of mind, not letting it fall back into the recesses, into this place where we forget what we have and what we should be grateful for. And the next piece, the next chapter was about parenthood. And it was a little bit more of like an extension of the same thing. But interestingly, the medicine like kind of reframed it and said, look at your parents and you as the child. And I'll be honest with you, this part was also a bit challenging because it wasn't resolved. I didn't get that, like, this is your lesson. It's beautiful, wrapped up in a bow. There you go. Your life's better now. It was like, hey, take a look at how you have let your relationship kind of disintegrate in a way with your own parents. And why is that? Like, where is that resentment coming from? And on the one hand, this is going to get a little bit personal. Hopefully that's okay. On the one hand, I was thinking about my mom and just trying to, I think I can say this. I'm going to say it. I'm going to say it. I reached the unfortunate realization that in my childhood, my mother's love was, or at least felt to me, to be conditional. It was dependent on achievement. It was dependent on doing what was expected of me and living a certain life that it felt like my mom wanted me to live, as opposed to fostering my own interests and passions and what I felt naturally drawn to. And that was really challenging because I felt angry. I got really mad about that in the experience. I tried to witness that anger rather than let it take over me. And what came as a result of that sort of stepping back into the witness was, hey, why was she like that? I mean, she didn't choose that, probably. I don't think she wanted to act in that way. And I know some things about my mom's own childhood that were very challenging. And it kind of underscored this idea of the generational trauma, how we learn things from our parents and then pass them down pretty passively unless we do something very intentional to break that trend and rewrite the pattern. So I'm not going to get into her whole backstory, but she was very much reliving and redoing something that she had been put through. On the other hand, then I started thinking about my dad, and I was like, hey, how was my dad involved in my growing up, and how was he different? And like, what can I learn from him? Because I'm never going to be a mother. I'm a father. And I realized that my dad has been an incredible source of support and love to all of his children. And almost like kind of, I saw the contrast. I feel kind of bad saying this because I'm not trying to like say my mom was bad or something. It's just like, you know, everybody's got their own journey that they're going through and it manifests in different ways. But my dad has done the total opposite, where no matter what his kids do, or his grandkids at this point, it's like if they pick up an interest that's the most obscure thing, he will drop everything and learn everything about it. Like just the simple fact that his son or daughter is into knitting. He'll like learn how to knit. I got into yoga and he became a dedicated Bikram yoga practitioner. He went like every day for 6 years. And he started when he was like 69 years old. That's amazing. And that's something that I would really like to emulate. I love that about how my dad parented his children. I want to do that with my son. Like I'm not into sports, but if my son Perry suddenly becomes like, is obsessed with basketball, I'm going to be learning about all the NBA players, So that was like my parenting lesson. That was part 2. And then part 3. Actually part 3 didn't, I said before that I systematically went through my intentions. I didn't get a direct answer to the business stuff, but I think that everything I learned in the family arena is going to naturally trickle down. I think that's kind of the lesson that I got there. But there was one other thing I would like to share that was a very visual and sort of emotional experience. If anybody's ever, been part of an ayahuasca ceremony who's watching or listening to this, you probably would agree that like the music is a big part of the medicine and a big part of like what drives your consciousness into different zones and areas and shifts the whole emotional landscape. That was something that really surprised me because, I haven't really had that experience before. To a degree, it makes a difference with like high-dose psilocybin journeys. I felt that. With Bufo or 5-MeO DMT, no, you're just like transported into another dimension instantly. And like everything that's going on in the physical world basically has no relevance to your experience. So my facilitator was like very talented with the music. He was singing Icaros. He was using lots of different traditional instruments, and he would intersperse in like music over speakers, like pre-recorded music. And he played this one piece from John Hopkins, who recorded the music for, I think specifically for ceremony. And it was this like very soft, tranquil piano piece that it was very atmospheric. It felt very big. And when that was playing, I felt myself fall through like a hole that just opened up into basically like zero gravity. I reached a point where I was at terminal velocity. And so there was no longer acceleration. I'm just floating through space. And it was me, my wife, and my son. And there were like little obstacles like also falling in our area. And I was just like swimming around them, dodging them, and trying to grab my 2 people to keep us together. And I was like, back to that thing about remembering the importance of my unit, my nuclear unit. I was like, this is everything. All that matters is that we keep this group together and we can do anything. And then the last part of the journey. So interesting fact, like fun fact about this was it was a really significant milestone for the facilitator, the shaman. So he was celebrating 20 years of being a shaman, of studying and facilitating these ceremonies. And it was the first time that he was ever serving a brew that he had played a role in producing. So he had like gone down and been with his teachers in Ecuador, and they had made this brew together and then brought it back to Austin. And he was like, it's very clean. And he hadn't even tasted it yet, but he was like, I know what went into this. It's powerful. And then he realized like that it was very concentrated and it was high in potency. So he offered a second dose at one point around, and I physically could not even move. And the fact that other people were going up and taking more, I was like, no way. Like I am so in another world right now. There's no way I can't even like go take that cup. But then after that, another, I don't know how much time had passed, maybe another hour or 2. He was like, it's the 20th anniversary. I don't normally do this, but if you want a third cup, come and take a third cup. So I was like, okay, now I'm ready. I'll go have my second cup. Some people had 3. I did not. I had my second cup. I took it back. And after I drank that second cup, I got to have the immense pleasure and privilege of just stepping beyond all of these figure your life out kind of questions, all these problems, and just bask in bliss. And I was just voyaging through amazing technicolor, beautiful like tunnels of space and time, and just feeling so good, just feeling so in love, just in acceptance. And I shared that with the group afterward. And he said, the facilitator was like, good for you for allowing that. And I was like, what do you mean? Like, that was the easiest part. It was just like joy. And he goes, yeah, but some people are just so obsessed with like being pragmatic that they can't even indulge. They can't even indulge in that blissed out state, because they're like, no, I got to go fix this. So good for you for recognizing that you deserve to feel that. And I hadn't really considered that an accomplishment or anything to like praise myself over. But after he said it, I was like, yeah, we need that. Like, we all need to take those moments to just enjoy this like gift of life. We can't always be in problem solving mode. I understand that there's a lot of purpose that comes out of solving problems for yourself and for others. Ultimately, I think that is what we're here to do in this incarnation, right? Like in the meat suit. I think there is a deeper purpose in embracing and experiencing love, but that transcends this lifetime, right? Like that's there waiting for us before and after life. But that being said, I think we have to take those moments to feel it now. And if we don't naturally do that, there needs to be a practice around it. So that's kind of what I took away from that last segment.
And did you sit one night or 2 nights?
This is just one night.
One night. Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Hey, first off, before I jump back in, incredible share, and thank you for your vulnerability. That's always my deep gratitude, is for the vulnerability and the humanity that always shines through on these shares. And it's incredible, just each time, especially with ayahuasca, in particular, and some of the things that you said as far as the gentle nature of the medicine, the feminine aspect, and it is grandma ayahuasca. It is traditionally known as the feminine plant versus some of the other, like the more masculine of the tobacco and things like that. Did they serve hape as well?
He did not, but he
Okay.
did smudge all of us with jungle tobacco before and after.
Nice. Yeah, the hapes can be very grounding throughout.
Oh
and
yeah,
especially at
I mean,
the end.
I've experienced it in other contexts, and it can be very strong for me. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't usually experience nausea from most, like, I've never gotten physically sick from mushrooms, and I did not purge during my ayahuasca. But there have been times with hape where I have to like really just chill out and control myself.
Yep. Yeah, it's crazy to see the same themes show up, and I feel very similar, as I'm sure everyone does, in that it's so hard to communicate. And that's always how I feel, like right after a ceremony, is I don't want to say anything, like I don't want to taint this, because there is no poor human language words that I can say that's going to encapsulate the deep understanding that was just downloaded over the past 7-8 hours. And the visual aspects are awesome, and I think really what's the beauty of the medicine is just this potent understanding that it delivers of things that are cliches that we say in life, and you just name any of them, and like it, you start to understand that, like, oh yeah, like people are laughing at the plant medicine folks, because it's like, oh, I understand this cliche, but it's true. It's this deep setted understanding of humanity, and yeah, just again, some of the things that I just heard through your 4 chapters. Letting go and surrendering, and that's always a big one for that's always the foundation of my intention now. Is I call it continuing to practice the art of letting go and the art of surrender. And I say that in that, that's always what I try to take in integration, as in the everyday life. Like, how can you just let go and let be what is, like just let it be, without having to manipulate and without having to control, because we do that enough already, just inherently. And in those conscious moments of just, hey, just let it go. There's not much more that you can do than you've already done to, a situation or a problem or whatever it is. Just learning to just simply, and not even accept, just simply let it be and witness. And that's always been really powerful. And then I like what you brought up in the kind of the ancestral range as well. That was something that I feel like I've gotten a lot more understanding on and didn't have a good grasp on before the medicine was just, being younger, like understanding, oh, there's that idea of respect the elders and, all this and that. And you just kind of see the human struggle where, young people just think that they know what's up and, they rebel and they know what's best. And, old fogies or whatever. And, the medicine has shown me and taught me, that the older we get, we're just becoming more aware. Like we're aware of youth, of, growing and maturation. And, we're aware of all the aspects of consciousness and there's such value and wisdom in there. And then also the healing aspect where, that was something that was really potent in the last, ceremonies that I was in as well, was just kind of this recognition of the generational healing, and the way that it was put was, hey, you're healing 7 generations back, 7 generations forward. And, that real understanding and witness of, where your parents might have come from, where their parents might have come from, and seeing the trickle down in the lineage there, and being the one who's taking the medicine back to your family, and I get asked that all the time, hey, was your wife going to come sit with you or whatnot? And I now don't know how to answer that question, because I'm kind of like, well, physically, probably not, she's probably going to stay at home and do her thing, but like,
but she's going to be affected.
She's there. Like, like she's there. I'm manifesting her, like, the universal consciousness that we hold as a unit is so present, is so potent in my experience. And, I have that same feeling where you have this understanding of, your parents, their parents, and you have this understanding of, I had the same thing where, this last time I just had these uncontrollable giggles come out, and then it was just this, like, and I would say, oh no, like I knew it was coming. And it was always in this moment where, people are purging, and then there's this like dead silent moment, and I'm the one to break the silence with just this immense giggling. And, you didn't
follow the agreements. You got to keep it cool, man.
Be cool, man. Be cool. And each time I just, saw like me as a representation of my son, and like saw that, that generational trickle down, and just, an understanding of what that is, what that means, and the power there. So it's incredible to continue seeing those same themes, come up and really starting to, through experience, but also just through everyone's experience, you start to understand a little bit more about the fabric of this medicine and how it weaves each time.
Yeah. And there's a lesson in there too. Like the universality of some of the themes that come up for basically everyone. It's that like the most important things to us are things that we share in common. I think a lot of the things that we feel on a day-to-day basis are really important, are things that isolate us, that make us feel like our situation is unique. But those things actually kind of fall away when you have the insight or the vision facilitated by medicine to look at what really matters. And it's like, it's these things that keep coming up. It's family. It's a sense of purpose. Am I doing something that matters? And yes, I totally agree. Like, it sounds so stupid to hear sometimes people talk about these epiphanies because it is corny. These are cliches. But, I just went to go see Shane Moss. You know him? He's a psychedelic themed comedian.
I do. Yeah, he was actually our second Share Your Experience episode.
Okay. Yeah, amazing. Yeah, he came through and he did a set in Austin and he did a bit about that. And it's like, yeah, I mean, of course, like it's like, okay, yeah, I just learned that I'm supposed to be present. Yeah, no shit. But there's something very different about grasping that intellectually and having a direct experience that makes you feel it. And I think that's the value in this medicine. It's not like something that someone can teach you. You have to learn directly.
How would you say that, like, what are some examples of ways that you have been integrating the experience, the journey, the medicine kind of into life here over the past couple months? And then kind of tied alongside that I'm curious on is, how have you felt that your meditation practice is any different than before?
Cool. Yeah, I like those questions. So in some senses, my integration practice has just been a continuation of what I already do, because I feel like I have the framework set up in my life to support these kinds of moments and learnings. So a big part of that for me is having a movement practice that allows me to disengage from like traditional quote unquote work. So I do a long yoga practice 3 times a week, physical yoga, like asana. And what's interesting, it's kind of ironic, is like I do that to get away and give myself spaciousness. But as a result of that, it's typically where my subconscious bubbles up and I get like the most creative ideas. So there's a lesson in there for sure. The other thing I like to do is take long walks. So I just walk around my neighborhood. Usually I do that with my son. So it's like a moment that we get to be together. He's in a stroller, he's 19 months old. So those things didn't really change. But I think where there were like more intentional active choices with the integration is around making decisions and behaviors that align with those insights. So a simple example is in the morning, I'm like, we're getting ready to bring my son to daycare or, go off for the day or whatever we need to do. And I have to get certain things done. I've got like SOPs for my business. I have certain like checklist items I need to do every morning. And in the old version of me, like the pre-ayahuasca version, would have been like stressed out and like a little bit anxious. Like, I got to get those things done. Like, Veronica, like, get out of the bathroom, watch Perry so I can do that. And now I have the perspective, because I have this reminder, this sort of like mantra playing in my head that like, this is actually what matters. The work is there to support this. So in those moments, I'm holding Perry and we're like having a moment. He's like, doing something silly and it's just him and me together. I feel no pressure whatsoever to get out of that, to rush through that. I'm like in it. I'm indulging in it and I'm enjoying it. And I take no shame or guilt in that feeling, because that's what it's about. Everything else is there to support that moment. Like, we can't keep kicking the can down the road, like delaying gratification. I think that is like a trait of high performer, successful type people, is like you're willing to forego, the reward to a later date. But back to that learning about like enjoying, feeling the bliss in the now, taking those moments when you can. That's a perfect one. Like, me and him, we're having that. That's what it's about.
I love that. I do. I think that is, I align with that too. And that to me is the practice. You're practicing that art of letting go. Letting go of your preconceived notions, letting go of the stress or the anxiety that's attached to something that does not matter. And then it's just that simple little, and that that's the. I always like. If
you ever get on like Twitter, people are always talking about their morning routines and how to optimize their lives. Once you have a kid, a lot of that goes out the window. So there's a big like kind of psychedelic transformation that happens there.
Yeah.
But then once you kind of normalize the new routine of having a kid, it's easy to kind of be like, okay, I can reintroduce the rigidity. No, don't do it. Don't fall
Yeah,
into the trap.
exactly. Yeah, it's what matters, what matters. And I think that was, same for me, part of that letting go of, does anything that you're doing, work wise or business wise, or, if you're, you know, and that, I always kind of relate it to like the idea that the new generation wants to be influencers. They want to have 1 million TikTok followers. And it's like, for what? Like what, what does that matter? And an amazing lady had taught me over a decade ago, the millions will come, but what you want to do is stop for the one. This whole idea of stopping for the one and being there for the one who's in front of you. And I had a recent convo with someone on here as well, where they pointed out a lot of the time stopping for the one can be you. You are the one that you need to stop for.
Yeah.
And take care of yourself, and or be present with the one who's in front of you, and that's what matters.
Tough for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
That's really tough for a lot of people. I actually feel like I've been pretty good about that. That's never been a huge challenge for me, but I definitely see that very commonly first with my wife. I see it. She can kind of like put herself last. And also a lot of our friends who became parents around the same time. It's very common with the mothers. I think there's like, mom guilt around prioritizing themselves, because it's like, you got to take care of the baby, which you do, but also the frame shift there is like, if you aren't taking care of yourself, how are you supposed to show up for your kid?
Yep. Healing the generations, Henry.
We're trying. We're out here.
I also am in incredible agreement about the sound, the music, the vibrations during the experience, and am immensely grateful every time for facilitators that I've worked with, just knowing, you come to this realization of like, oh my gosh, they've been playing this incredible, harmony or whatever you want to call it. I don't know, concert, I'm at the front row seat to the most amazing Recital. Concert. And, and a lot of the time, right, they're like right over you playing music, playing flute, sound bath, whatever. And, there's just this incredible, energy and atmosphere that the sound moves you through.
Yeah. It was transformative, like moment to moment. I actually like felt different aspects of myself come out to play when different music was playing. Like there was this one moment that I won't soon forget. He started playing this drum, and it was just a really simple, just like kind of metronomic beat, like boom, 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 boom. And all of a sudden I just became like a warrior. I like felt my chest get bigger, and I became this like hunter. There was a little bit of a serpentine energy to it, but I was on the prowl, and I was like licking my lips, ready to like pounce on something and eat it. It was crazy.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it's so good.
Maybe that was my business lesson, to be honest with you. It's like, go take what's yours.
I always have this, call it confusion, because I feel like the breath, and I always end up connected to the breath during these ceremonies. And, they always say, oh, if you're going through it, like come back to your breath, like recenter and focus on your breath. And I always do that. And it's just a conscious recognition of what my breath is doing rather than controlling the breath. It's just recognizing sometimes it's even, other times it's heavy and drawn out, or it's so soft, and you're just becoming aware of it. Mm-hmm. And it's so correlated to the music. And sometimes I have this trickery where I can't tell if the music is leading my breath, or if like my breath and everything is leading, and then all of a sudden, and that would always happen during the sound, where like you have this,
like you're the conductor of the music through your breath. You're actually driving the music choice.
Yes.
Maybe. I mean, there's maybe a collective consciousness at play there.
That's the intuition that I always get at weird times during the ceremony, and then other times where I have like a thought pattern, and then it like hits on this, kind of like the punchline of the thought, and that's when the song stops. And then it like tricks my brain. It's like, it makes me laugh. I'm like, of course, like I hit the punchline and then the music stopped. Like it's almost like the medicine's like,
it's like a punctuation mark. Like that was it. You got it.
Yeah.
We can stop here, take that in, internalize, and then we can move on.
Yeah. And then the giggles always start. Oh man. Well, I appreciate your share again. And, we can cut it with last words here, but yeah, the medicine's powerful. I always enjoy just seeing these common threads, and the new life, and it always helps bring me back into these experiences too. Like I feel like I'm reliving a transformative moment, and continuing to integrate my own experience, just having these conversations. So I'm always incredibly grateful for the time and the energy and the vulnerability, just being able to share some humanity with each other.
Yeah. Well, hey, like I said, I really appreciate you giving me the opportunity and platform to share this, because it feels therapeutic, to share these things. There were a few moments where I had to like take a deep breath and be like, am I okay talking about this? But the reason after checking in, I realized, if I say this, then it gives other people permission maybe to have a similar share in a more intimate setting, maybe with a loved one, or perhaps on a platform like this. So, it's a ripple effect I'm hoping to cultivate. I think the more that people can be honest, the more that we can see and appreciate our shared experiences and shared humanity. And that's in and of itself healing.
Well, awesome. I pray for you, brother, to run with those blessings, run with the integration, and keep listening for the medicine. She's always calling. She's always calling in different ways. I've come to find. So
yes, she's supporting me through this conversation and through my life now. So I feel that.
Awesome. All right, we'll cut the recording there.